In Chapter 10, we're going to start working with brushes. So this will add another dimension to what we're going to be doing. This is the file in to show you what we're going to look like when we're done. I always like to look at that first. I'm going to close that down and go back to my start. We are going to be using brushes, and the brushes that I've got up, or if yours is not up, be sure to go to Windows and turn on the brushes palette. I have a different view than what's shown in the book on page 279. If you go to thumbnail view, it shows them like this. And I'm going to go to list view so it shows the brush and the name of it. At the bottom, if you look on 279, it's going to kind of show you what these things are in the brushes palette. Be sure that you go and turn on the show calligraphic brushes. We're going to select the charcoal feather, and I'm going to enlarge my display because I need to see what I'm doing, and you'll find out that I'm not real good at using a brush. So I've got this one. We want to be sure that the fill is no fill. Click on your brushes tool. We'll start by just doing the outside of this trunk. And thank goodness this is a thick brush so that it doesn't always show how crooked my lines are. So put those first two up, and then we're going to just kind of continue. If I continue drawing, it'll make it a part of what we have. If you double click on the brushes palette, be sure that this keep selected is not turned on. And then go back to your brushes and complete the rest of the trunk. So I'm going to add, well, that one was really bad. I'm going to add the rest of the trunk strokes with this charcoal feather. I expect yours to be much better than mine. Let me just doctor up that one. If you did not draw the brushes the way you would like, you can do some revisions or editing. If you hold the Control key down and click on one of the paths, then when you redraw it, it will go to the new path. So I can try to straighten up some of these that I messed up. So the key is to hold the Control key down first. We want to turn on some additional brushes, so go down to the Open Brush Library, go to the Artistic and the Artistic Ink. So that will give you a whole separate palette of brushes. If you don't see them like this so you can identify them easily, don't forget that you can put them in the list view. We want to select all of these tree trunk brushes, branches that we drew, and then we're going to play around with changing the way they look. We're going to look for the one that's called Dry Ink 1, and you can see what that does to it. Just play around with a few of them to see what they look like, and then we need to go back to the charcoal feather because that's the one we're going to stay with. Next, we're going to work on this fall leaf brush. So double click it to bring it up, and the changes that we're going to make are on page 286. I think this one is going down to 40, and this one is 60. And of course, if you were doing this yourself, you wouldn't know exactly where to move it to without just sort of playing around with it first. And those are still the same, so click OK. Then we're going to go back to the brush and brush over all of these paths with our leaves. Of course, it doesn't really matter on this one if we get the path exactly or not because the brush is so big. So we're going to put our leaves on the top of the tree. We want to work now with these leaves at the top, trying to change the color of them a little bit. It's real important that you'll have the tree trunk locked. If you don't have each one of the layers locked, I must have turned on, here's my layers panel. I'm going to open up this layers panel. Let's see if I can separate that. Come on, I want it separated. So I can pull this down. If you'll find your tree trunk and lock the tree trunk, all those paths that we drew, because we don't want to select these when we're selecting the leaves at the top. You can also select it and click lock. But this is going to lock it so that now when I select the leaves, I just get the leaves. See, I missed one little piece. Let's see, which that must have been that one. I missed that one. So let's see if I got them all. Still have one. Must be that one. Let's try it again. Oh well, we'll just work with that one. And if we find our fall leaf and double click it, we bring up this palette we've worked with before. And what I want you to do is to turn the preview on and look at the colorization. The tints and shades, the hue shift. Oh, mine just all went black. It didn't do that before. So play around a little bit to see what those are, and then just cancel it to go back to what you have. Now we're going to go back to our charcoal feather brush, and with that one, we are going to draw a path down. Whoops, I guess I have to get the brush here. Draw a path down both sides of the trunk. And then we're going to open up that menu. I'm sorry, not this one. We want to go down here and open up. We want to select both of the tree trunk we just drew, and then go down to right beneath the charcoal feather and click the options. We're going to make it 350% wide, and we want the stroke to be a light brown color. So just find something light brown. The next thing we're going to be doing is working on this canoe down here. For this one, you're going to need to find another brush. If you'll, under the libraries for brushes, go to Open Brush Library, Artistic, and Artistic Ink. And I have mine open over here. And we're going to be choosing, what is it called here? The tapered stroke down here. Whoops, I always forget to do that. the tapered stroke. So we're going to have this one chosen, and the stroke color needs to be the canoe outline, canoe stroke. Then take your brushes tool. Now this is important. You want to draw across the bottom of the canoe, and you'll do better than me. When you get up here, do not release the mouse, but go back across, because you want this to be one shape. And then put your line across the top. That's pretty sad. And your two across here. And then we want to select this bottom piece, and under the fill there's one called Canoe Fill. See if I can get the stroke to go off. There we go. Now we're going to work on the waves under the boat, and I've moved mine out a little bit so I can get to it a little bit better. We need a calligraphic pen, and I believe it is on here. Let's see, where did I find it? Must have been in some others. Now we have these on here, so let me just see if I can find it. It's this one that's called 40 Point Flat. We want to double click it because it needs to be a little bit thinner. This is going to be 35 points down here. The rest of that's minus 20 and 60. We want to pick for the stroke this blue it's called the waves on here. Now when you're using this calligraphy pen or brush, you're not going to just go straight across because you want it to be well, like calligraphy. So I'm going to drag around. So I've already got my transparency down. The transparency is supposed to be at 45%, so yours will probably need to be taken down to 45%. By using the calligraphy pen, you're going to have part of it wider and part of it more narrow. So that's your waves. The next thing we're going to work on is this part right here. I'm going to get it where I can see it a little bit better. I'm actually going to bring it in a little bit more because we're going to be working on this part. There's a little chain that we're going to work on. So this time you need to go to your brushes palette, and the library that we went to under borders was borders dashed, this one, and I've already got it on here. You want to look for the one that says dashed circles 1.4. Dashed circles 1.4. Double click it to open up the panel. And this is one place that I noticed that my version of Illustrator was different than your version. So if you look on page 298, you'll see what your version will look like, because my 20% is in a different place. I'm going to make it 20%. And I think that's the only thing we change here is the 20%. We want to get the color, I believe this is it, dash circle color, and grab our brush. The chain is going to go around this stake and down the line to the boat, and I forgot to take my transparency off. So let me do that again. I'm going to make the transparency 100 before I draw it. So let's try it again. There we go. And then just get a pen tool, and we're going to use a darker color of brown. In fact, that might, well, let me see if we want maybe the canoe stroke. Now be sure with your pen that you do one shape, so I'm just going to be clicking on these corners and then connect it there, and then we want to fill it with that dark canoe color as well. While you have it selected, go to Object, Arrange, and send it to the back behind the chain. Over to the side of your document, there is a pattern already there that we're going to do something with. We want to select them and unlock them so that we can work with it. The first thing we'll do is to take this little blue swirl and drag it to our swatches panel, and this one's going to be called the corner. Take this long one and drag it over there, and it's going to be called the side. And that's important that you name them. You'll find out why later on. And then down in your brushes panel, we're going to create a new brush. It's going to be a new brush pattern. Whoops, I don't want that selected. This is why it's important that you had those named. So we're going to start with this will be a top edge, and it's going to be the side, so that's that one we just did. When we get to the corner, it's going to be the corner. This one is also going to be the corner that's going to kind of complete that circle. We're going to name it border, and then click OK. And this is pretty slick the way we can put this border then onto our document. So let's go back to the document. We're going to need to go out just a little bit because we need to see this whole screen. We're going to do a rectangle, but we want it filled with nothing and no stroke either. So take a rectangle and draw across. And then we're going to click on our brush, and that will create the brush panel all around the side. We do want to adjust it a little bit, so double click this and make it 130%. And when this comes up, click Leave Strokes. Now with that same border, we're going to draw this little swirl up here. And then go back to your rectangle. Be sure it doesn't have a stroke, but we're going to fill this one with the green grass. So we're going to draw a box over this area. It's just going to be filled with that green. Send it to the back. And we're going to put an effect on this one that's really kind of fun. So you're going to go to Effect, Stylize, and Scribble. And I think I've got mine all the right Well, maybe not. If you want to look on page 307, one thing you need to be very careful of is when you're putting these in, this is 5 points, and it'll adjust it to inches. 3 points, curviness stays at 5. Leave that one. Spacing is 6 points and 0.5 points. If you don't change it from inches to points, you're not going to end up with something that looks like grass. So click OK, and that just makes the grass. Then we're going to put one more thing. Grab your text tool and drag a box. We want our size to be 24. Oh, yeah. And Myriad, I think, is what we want. Myriad Pro Black. And then just type Lakeside Designs. And you'll notice my box isn't quite big enough, so I'm going to stretch it out. And with that, you have finished this one.